Welcome to the College Basketball Net Profit Show, Thursday, February 2nd. Ian Cameron and Conor Mack ready to break it down. Thursday means a lot of mid-major conferences, Conference USA, Summit League, a lot of that going on, Sun Belt, Colonial. It's a busy night with all those conferences, a West Coast conference, but there is a little Pac-12, a little Big Ten mixed in as well. And that's where most of the marquee games will come from. But we're actually going to start with one of the biggest games of the night. Honestly, it is. It's from Conference USA. It's the team with the longest win streak in college basketball right now, and that's the Florida Atlantic Owls. Man, what a season it has been. For this Florida Atlantic Owls team. They've been absolutely terrific, entering this game with a remarkable win streak on the entire season, 21-1, and they will go to Alabama, Birmingham take on the Blazers in a big matchup here. UAB currently 1.5-point home favorites in this game. The total sitting at around 146.5 across the board. Obviously, the status of Jelly Walker, the star guard for UAB, hangs over this matchup. He is probably going to be a game-time decision. I think he's going to play. Now, he was warming up before each of the last couple games, and he, not the coach, Andy Kennedy, is the guy that made the decision, hey, I'm not ready to go just yet. I don't want to come back unless I'm 100%. Will he be 100%? I think the fact that this line's ticked up from Pick'em to minus to 1.5 with UAB as slight home favorites, I think it's maybe an indicator or a tell that maybe this guy is going to play tonight. It is a revenge spot. Florida Atlantic won the first meeting, and it was a great game. It was back and forth. It was down to the wire. Florida Atlantic survived, got the win on their home floor. All things must come to an end, Conor, and I think it tells you a lot that this Florida Atlantic team, which is on this incredible win streak that they have put together, is actually an underdog in this game. And don't sleep on UAB's home court. This is a tough place to win. If they get Jelly Walker back, which I think they will, it could galvanize them in this matchup. They've obviously taken their lumps. They had a stretch there starting with that loss against Florida Atlantic that really started a bit of a tailspin for UAB, where they went 1-5 in their next 6 games. But they've bounced back. They've won the next 2. They could get a little spring in their step from Walker's return. UAB has beaten Florida Atlantic 5 straight times on this home floor, and they've covered all but one of those games. So Florida Atlantic has had no recent success here at UAB. I'm already leaning UAB even without him, but certainly if he's in, we'll be pulling the trigger. I think they get the win here at home. I think the streak ends tonight for Florida Atlantic. I like the over as well. I think this is a game that we should see some points in it. Conor, what do you think?
Yeah, I think he's going to go. The more this moves 1.5 and we see 2s, I think they probably had this circled, to keep him out till this game.
Yep.
If he plays, I kind of go lean over too, because this is low, and they've been on the unders without him. I think they just kind of had to, when you miss 24 points, it's not easy, especially a guy who has the ball that much and scores that much. But they look better the last couple. I mean, the other side, FAU's won 20 in a row. So the people that like them, I get it. But I think here, this would be huge. You got to be pumped. UAB at home with the revenge you talk about. They need a big win too, UAB. So I lean that way. I'm going crazy about this game because everything that's going on, but that's where I'd be as UAB.
All right, me too. All right, next up, we've got Towson and Hofstra in the Colonial. It's Hofstra 3-point home favorites and the total 137. I think the wrong team's favored. Towson has been a tough matchup for Hofstra. Towson already beat Hofstra earlier this year. Normally, I'm a revenge guy. I don't think Hofstra's particularly good this year. I've seen this team play a lot. This is nowhere close to the level we've seen Hofstra play in the past. They have played better the last 3 games. I get it. But I think this is a tough matchup here against Towson. Towson has won 6 straight. They've got that really stifling defense. They can slow down Hofstra, frustrate them. They've got size that gives Hofstra fits. And we already, again, saw them win earlier this year. And Towson's covered 4 straight head-to-head against Hofstra. I mean, everything's lining up Towson here. They've really, really been tough on this Hofstra Pride team. And look, they've beaten better Hofstra teams in the past than this year's group, and they've already got a win over this year's group. I think the fact that, look, Hofstra's at home, Hofstra's playing a little better, Hofstra's in revenge, and this number's ticked down from 3.5 to 3. I think it tells you that there's everybody, not everybody, but there's people that are out there that are thinking what I'm thinking. That, yeah, revenge be damned. Towson's the better of these two teams. Towson's owned Hofstra. Towson's going to win this game. That's what I'm thinking. I like Towson here +3. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, I do too. Both these teams, though, have been good against the number. I just think Towson's the better team, the tougher team. A little bit better defensively on the glass here. One thing, Hofstra, is they can shoot a little bit, and that keep them in games. And they've been good at home, and they got their ass whipped by Towson. I just don't know if they should be 3.5 point favorites, because I just think Towson's a little bit better. So I didn't go crazy, and I still haven't bet this one yet. But I was the same way. I just think Towson's the better team, and I'd look at them. Maybe early, too.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe a first half look. All right, next up, we go to the Big Ten, Michigan, Northwestern. We've got Northwestern 3.5 point home favorites. The total in this one sitting at 138.5 across the board. Northwestern, disappointing for me on them, plus the points against Iowa. Great start, played a good first half, played pretty good into the second half, and then defense really collapsed down the stretch, and they lost 86-70. To Iowa in that game. That's now actually 7 straight Northwestern games that have gone over the total. That might continue here. I mean, this total is actually being bet down a little bit, 139 to 138, but both teams have kind of trended over. Both of the last 2 games for Michigan have trended over. Michigan's off back-to-back losses, Purdue at Penn State. They've got to try to show they can bounce back here going on the road against Northwestern. I think when you look at the matchup, I'm a little perplexed. Northwestern's laying 3.5. They've had trouble with Dickinson in the past. They really have had trouble containing him. Michigan has covered 4 of the last 5 against Northwestern, and they've won all 5 of those games as well. And yet here we've got Northwestern laying points here in this game. So I think it's a little bit – I get it. The home court's been pretty decent for them. They've had a couple of home wins in a row, but, you can't compare a couple of these home wins to what they're going to face tonight, a team that's really played them well, Michigan. And when Northwestern's last 2 wins at home were Wisconsin, who are a mediocre outfit, disappointing season by their standards, and Minnesota. So it's not like we can go crazy giving Northwestern a bunch of accolades for winning home games against those 2 teams. So I think this is tougher for them tonight. I like Michigan here with the points. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, I'm not like this. I even see a 137 this is drop, because I could only be on the over. Northwestern's defense has not been good. What have they hit? Yep. 7 or 8 overs. Maybe they're just thinking this is just going to be one of these games. And Michigan, for the most part, especially on the road, an over team, had a sluggish with Minnesota and the game against Maryland. But I don't really love their defense. I like this over, and I kind of lean Michigan. Northwestern just can't beat them. I don't want to lay 3.5 with Northwestern. They just seems like every year they struggle with the better teams in conference, and they lose these games. So to me, I don't trust them. So sidewise, it's Michigan, but I don't love that this is dropping a bit, because I think it can get over.
All right, yeah, I agree with that. All right, next up here we've got another Big Ten matchup: Wisconsin and Ohio State. Ohio State 7.5 point home favorites, and this one total 132 pretty much across the board. In this game, I certainly lean Ohio State. I mean, Wisconsin can't be backed in any form right now, in my opinion. This is a horrible team. They failed to cover in 10 in a row. How about that? 0-10 against the spread for Wisconsin in their last 10 games. Their only victories were Penn State and Minnesota at home. I mean, to say this team's a disaster and a disappointment would be an understatement. I'm on the fence. I think I am going to bet the Buckeyes here. The only fear is the number's higher than I would have liked. But I think they can still cover this number. I mean, Wisconsin's been dreadful the last few games. I mean, Maryland, they got blown out by 18. They lose by 10 at home, mind you, against Illinois. 18-point loss at Indiana, 10-point loss at Illinois. I mean, just not good. The offense just grinds to a halt. That's concerning. I think when you look at Ohio State, the concern, of course, for them lately, his key has been banged up, but he's good to go. I think Sensabaugh, his shooting ability is going to be a problem here for Wisconsin. And if those 2 guys have good games, who else is going to equal them offensively for this horrible, horrible offensive team? that is Wisconsin. So I'm going to lay the 7.5. I'm keeping it a small bet because I don't love the number. I think it's well priced. I mean, it's not like you're getting a bargain here. People know Wisconsin stinks. People know Wisconsin's burning the pocketbook of their backers for the last 10 games. But I'm still going to go ahead and lay the points here with Ohio State 7.5. We'll keep it smaller though. What do you think, Connor?
That's where I'd look because I don't want Wisconsin. And maybe people think this is too big. It's just when are they going to wake up? A team that's 0-9 or 0-10 against the number, and they struggle to get past 60. I mean, this team hasn't hit 70 in a while. And I don't think Ohio State is the greatest defensive team, but they seems like they play better at home and they can get out to a lead and shoot it better there. I just didn't love the 7.5. They haven't been good also. I mean, they beat Iowa that day, but yeah, I lean that way. I just, I want nothing with this game.
Like I said, the line was just a little bit higher than I would have liked, but I'm still going to go ahead and lay the points because I do remember that game against Iowa, where Ohio State was able to beat them by 16 on this home floor. So I think they could still stretch this out to double digits. We'll see if that can continue here in this one. All right, we go to the Pac-12 now. Oregon State, Arizona State. The Sun Devils, 12-point home favorites, 128.5 being the total in this one. Certainly, Arizona State, the better of these two teams, it goes without saying. Oregon State did have a surprising outright win as underdogs at home against Colorado in their last game. But what we've clearly seen from this bunch is don't expect that to be something that's repetitive because after a win, this team has been absolutely dreadful. 4 straight losses for Arizona State. They're certainly not playing great basketball. They've had their share of injuries without a doubt. We'll see if they can rally the troops and bounce back here in this one. These teams played at Corvallis earlier this year. 74-69 it was in favor of Arizona State in this game. We'll see if they can win again. But Oregon State's covered 4 of the last 5 meetings against Arizona State. Do we trust Oregon State here is what the question, because every time they've gotten a big win, they've bounced the next game and they've gotten annihilated. And this kind of feels like after 4 straight losses back home, Arizona State's ready to crush somebody. Beavers could be crushable, but is Arizona State ready to lay 12? I lean actually to the favorite here, Arizona State, even though it's a high number. What do you think, Connor?
I want nothing here. I don't want an Arizona State team that's lost 4 in a row that looks lost. And you mentioned Oregon State. There's no consistency to this team. It's not that they shot it well. They have pretty good defense, and Colorado was just horrible. I mean, what was that game? Like 60-52 or something like that?
That's right. Yep.
On Saturday, and I had them the game before. They don't make shots. It's really tough. But if they're making them, they could hang around. You're right. This seems like if Arizona State gets right, they could win with 15-20. Seems like an easy one, but I look out. Or if not, Oregon State's just in it, the whole way. And I think they cover the number. It's just tough to trust them. Where I want to back them is at home. And for the most part, not on the road. That's why, I guess if I had a free bet or something, I'd take the 12 with Oregon State. But believe me, I'm not pumped for it.
I don't blame you. It's a big number. It is a big number, and there's a lot of variance with a capital V we might see in this game with the end result. All right, next up, we stay in the Pac-12 here. It is Stanford and Utah. Utah, 6-point home favorites in this one, 133 being the total in this game. Utah, of course, that home court of theirs where they've typically historically played well. I think you get them in a good spot here back home after a 68-56 loss on the road against Oregon. Stanford actually has won 4 straight, and they've covered 4 of the last 5. But, Oregon State, not good. Oregon was actually a pretty solid win, but that was at home. And then they played Chicago State and they played Cal. Big deal. Now you got to go on the road and face Utah off a loss. When you look at it, Utah, by the way, they played. Did they play? Yeah, last year both games were actually in Stanford. Actually, the one meeting was in Stanford. They only played once last year. It was in Stanford. The year before, they played twice. Once in Stanford, once at Utah. And the game in Utah was a 14-point win for Utah. They played on New Year's Eve, and Utah got a 5-point win at Stanford. I think Utah beats them again here. I think laying the 6 is a good way to go. It's a reasonable number. I know Stanford is starting to cover some numbers, and they've started to win a few games, but come on, sisters of the poor in some of them. Oregon State, Cal, Chicago State. Chicago State's getting better, but they're no Utah, obviously. So, you don't give Stanford too much credit for some of those wins. I think it's a good spot. Or Utah's back home, strong home court, off a loss. I think they bounce back. And I think the number's reasonable, just laying 6. So Utah -6 for me. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, they're back the place I want to back them. I think Madsen's hopefully got to go. I think he's a big part for this Utah team, especially at home. He plays better at home. The 2 losses you mentioned, and at Stanford, those are all home wins. They've played well. I didn't love this. I didn't like this number, and it's come down. If you like Utah, I think you lay it, but I don't want to do it here. This game, I'm just off. I thought about the under, but I don't even want that either, so I'm off.
All right, Connor, off this one. Next up, we continue along. Loyola Marymount, BYU, West Coast Conference here. BYU laying about 4.5 in this one, 5 actually in most spots now. 143, 144 the total in this game. Loyola Marymount and first thought that came to mind here was maybe we can get up and over this total. Loyola Marymount, last game against Pepperdine went over the total. A lot of their games have been, in the upward, especially against teams that can score. You see them kind of push pace. I mean, 3 straight overs for BYU until they played St. Mary's. St. Mary's drags everybody into a rock fight, everybody into a half-court defensive slugfest. I think BYU gets back more into a transition-based up-and-down affair here against Loyola Marymount that won't mind running with them either. You look at the recent meeting last year at BYU, it was 86-60, went over the total. The overs cashed in 3 of the last 5. That's probably the direction I would go here, is over the total. The more this line goes up, the more I'm kind of interested actually in the Marymount side. They're laying it here with BYU, and I get it. It's a home favorite in revenge. Loyola Marymount beat them last month in January, 64-59 in Loyola Marymount, but revenge spot here clearly for BYU. But Loyola Marymount's been a covering machine, 4-0 straight up, 4-0 against the spread in their last 4 games, including the massive upset against Gonzaga. BYU's kind of trending in the other direction. So I know it's the revenge angle fueling the money being bet here on the Cougars, but the more this goes up, the more I'm interested in going against that and taking LMU +5 now, you can get at most books. What do you think here, C-Mac?
I think this is, though, man, Loyola's been really good, and they've been great against the number, 14-7. BYU desperately needs this win, though, after 3 losses to Santa Clara on the road, San Francisco, and then they lose the close one to St. Mary's. But you're right. I just don't like this as stretched to 4.5, 5. It's kind of like, that's a little bit too far where I'd want this, really like this under 3 for BYU. And I've been all over Loyola a ton. I think they could maybe keep this close, but I think BYU in the end wins this game. It's just, do you want to lay the number? And I'm not. It's just a lean. I'm passing.
All right, passing on this one is Connor. Okay, next up, Washington, UCLA in the Pac-12. We've got UCLA 17.5-point home favorites, 136 the total. I'm probably going to stay off. It's probably not a game I'm going to get involved with at all. I think, when it comes to the number of points you have to lay with UCLA, I'm not in a rush to do that. And UCLA actually, has failed to cover 2 straight. They've lost 2 straight. The concern, though, is UCLA back home here against Washington. They aren't going to take this Huskies team lightly. And if you look at some of the recent meetings between UCLA and Washington, 76-50, 77-66, 74-49. All in favor of UCLA. And in fact, on New Year's Day, it was a beatdown by 25 in Seattle for UCLA by 25. And I don't think they're going to take Washington lightly after coming off the road and losing back-to-back games last weekend on the road against USC and Arizona. So I think when you look at this matchup, it certainly screams like a UCLA ready to kick the shit out of somebody. You might be able to do that against this Washington team. We just saw Washington get blown out 95-72 on their home floor by Arizona. So yeah, I wouldn't want to step in front of UCLA in this spot, but I don't want to lay this many either. So clear pass. Connor, what do you think?
Yeah, it is a ton. I think they get it done. And, they have their team total, I think, right there, too. I think it's 77. UCLA, real efficient, not the quickest team, but Washington can kind of get sloppy and get up and down a little bit and lean to the over. But I didn't want anything here. This is just a pass for me. Bruins win. It's just what's the number? You on mute?
There we go. Sorry. Houston, Wichita State. We've got Houston 12-point road favorites, 130 the total. I like Wichita here a little bit. Houston on this road, recently we've seen them not have some issues. We've had some issues, period, with Houston. Covering some of these big numbers. Actually, on the road, it's at home where they've had issues. On the road, they're actually 6-0 straight up, 6-0 against the spread. But Wichita State, if you start to look at the way they've played, they lost to Tulane in overtime. They lost at 10 by 10 at Memphis, covered the number. They've been a pretty solid point spread team. They have not lost a game in conference play by more than this number. I mean, they lost by 7 at UCF, by 10 to ECU, by 9 to Cincinnati, 10 at Memphis, 5 to Tulane. I mean, beating this team by margin's been difficult. And, I think it's definitely a spot where it's a lot of points to be laying here with Houston. And Houston, they've got a revenge game up next with Temple. The team that went to Houston and beat the Cougars just recently. Well, Houston faces them next. So I think in this spot here, with that game on deck, a little too many points to be asking Houston to lay here. But keep in mind their last game against Cincinnati, 14.5-point favorites. They only won that game by 6. It's worth noting this defense has not been as good, and it's becoming more and more noticeable here for Houston that, they're giving up 70s and high 60s, which for them is actually much more than they usually do. Like in years past, we see this team holding opponents to, 50s or low 60s routinely. Now I'm seeing a lot of opponents of this Cougars team getting into the high 60s, even into the 70s. So keep that in mind here going into this game. I've been starting to ride this Wichita team over. Isaac Brown's team is starting to figure out how to make shots in a big way. They have been a much improved offensive team the last 5 games. I'm going to take a shot with this low total and go over. I mean, 130, we're not asking for a ton of points. We're not asking for a huge shootout here. We're just taking advantage of a Wichita team that's improved offensively, Houston team that can still spread it out offensively themselves, and a Houston team that I think defensively, they're still a very good defensive team. But I'd pump the brakes right now on saying they're an elite defensive team because I've seen them play better team defense in years past than I've seen recently. And to me, that is definitely concerning here also about laying 12. So I like Wichita a little bit. I really like the over. I mean, that's an even stronger stance for me in this game, over 130, 130 and a half. Connor, what do you think here? Houston, Wichita.
Yeah, Wichita. You mentioned the totals just been real good to the over. I think 8 of 9, something like that. Then they scored. You mentioned just switching it up a little bit after being, Walton Rojas, Porter Jr. These guys have been able to score lately. See, the problem is Houston could just put a stranglehold on them, but they haven't been great lately. And I don't know, maybe it's just the coasting. And this Wichita team just seems to play them tough the last few years. It seems like they can hang within 5, 10 these games. Last year it went to OT. I could get beat here, but I took Wichita plus 12 and a half. I got 12 and a half, but 12's out there. I think they can cover the number.
That's an excellent point. Thank you for mentioning that. I forgot to, and I was going to. I just forgot. You're not going to always get everything in that you want to say, but that's another thing. Wichita's been a tough historical matchup for Houston. Wichita's played Houston tough in a lot of recent head-to-head meetings, so that is something you want to factor in here. So absolutely, I think that's another reason why I thought taking the points was worth it, and I think this total's very reachable to the over at 130 and a half here. All right, next up, we've got Cal and Colorado in the Pac-12. In this one, we've got Colorado 15.5-point home favorites, 129 the total in this game. Certainly, when you look at this matchup, it's California. Obviously, it's been a rough year, 3-18 straight up. They haven't won on the road yet. They've failed to cover in 3 straight. That's definitely something that would concern you. And if anything, Colorado ain't going to take them lightly. Cal beat Colorado at home earlier this year, 80-76. I mean, they had easily their best offensive performance of the year, one of. Actually, they followed that up and put 92 on the board somehow against Stanford. But one of their best offensive performances of the season, California, came against this Colorado team. I doubt that they're going to be able to duplicate that here in this one. Colorado, though, here in Boulder, The last game was 58-55 against Washington State. They're struggling to score points. They've been held below 60 2 of the last 3 games. I mean, certainly think Colorado is going to bounce back, and they might want to, they have an axe to grind with California after the Golden Bears beat them earlier this year. But we're still talking about a plodding offensive team, one game to the next, and laying 15.5 with them. I'm not ready to do that. So I'm definitely going to pass on this one and lean a little slightly to the under, but it's very low total. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, Cal's played Colorado tough, and this Cal team's back to, they just got their ass whipped. The last few 45, 48, back to not
Back
breaking
can't
50.
Put the ball in the ocean, exactly. The last
Yeah.
2 games. Yeah.
It's, and those weird offensive explosion games were just strange. And even the Colorado one. You got to think Colorado's pissed here. They just got whipped. What whipped, but Oregon State, they lost by 8 and only scored 52 points. I think you maybe look at them back home. It's just the number. I don't want to, even first half, whatever this is, 7.5, 8. Even though I think they get it done, I don't want it.
All right, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with passing, as we always say. Next up, we've got Oregon, Arizona. We stay in the Pac-12 for this one. This should be a good one in the late. This is probably the game Walton's doing tonight, I would think. Arizona, 8-point home favorites, 151 the total in this game. When you look at this matchup, Oregon, obviously, earlier this season in Eugene, they beat the brakes off Arizona. It was non-competitive. It was domination, really, throughout that game. So definitely a revenge spot for Arizona. And I've often looked to back Arizona in some of these spots, but it hasn't always worked out. I feel a little more confident in them at home. I mean, you look at on the road, they barely won against Washington State, but they followed that up and they blew the doors off Washington 95-72 in their last game. I think definitely Arizona is going to play better, probably get the win, but they have not beaten Oregon by margin in forever. This has been a very, very strong, dominant borderline series history in favor of Oregon. Oregon's covered 9 of the last 10 head-to-head against Arizona, and Oregon's also won 8 of the last 10 against Arizona. 8-2 straight up, 9-1 against the spread here for Oregon against Arizona. So that's the issue. I mean, I certainly think from a spot and a situational perspective, screams Arizona. It stands out like a sore thumb, Arizona, but consistently Dana Altman has had success against Arizona. And it hasn't mattered who the coach has been. It didn't matter all those years when Sean Miller was here. It hasn't mattered the first 2 seasons here under Tommy Lloyd. This Arizona team has consistently had trouble beating Oregon at all, let alone beating them by margins. So, I want to take Arizona here, but you're laying 8.5 against a team that's had complete domination, really, for the last, several years against Arizona. So I'm off that. I probably would like the over here a little bit, though. 151. Oregon's becoming a pretty simple team to figure out. If a team wants to run against them, they'll run. If a team wants to slow it down against them, they'll slow it down. They'll basically dance with the tempo that the other team wants to play. And so I'm probably more interested in betting over the total here in this game as opposed to Arizona. I wanted to take Arizona. I just don't know if I wanted to lay 8.5 with them. We've lost Conor Mack just for a brief moment, but we'll get his thoughts on this game when he returns. In the meantime, we'll move on to San Francisco and St. Mary's. We've got St. Mary's, the Gales, 12-point home favorites, 129 the total in this one. I mean, St. Mary's has become a very difficult team to bet their games because you always keep thinking to yourself, man, this team's they play slow, but they're excellent defensively, but they're not exactly the team you want to lay points with, especially at home when they're laying even bigger numbers. And then they host San Diego at home, they cover. Portland at home, they cover. Loyola Marymount at home, they cover. Santa Clara, a very good Santa Clara team in their last game, and they won by 19. I mean, you'll want to maybe go against St. Mary's when they're laying these big numbers at home, and all they do is they keep winning and covering in these home games, and they've done it against better teams than San Francisco. I think Santa Clara is a better team than San Francisco. So I'm passing. I mean, I've lost a couple, including that Santa Clara game recently, going against St. Mary's laying double digits at home, and all they do is they keep on covering. So, and San Francisco's been too up and down and all over the place for me to want to trust them when I think, like I said, I think Santa Clara is a little bit better than them, and even they got drilled by St. Mary's on this floor. So going to be a pass for me on this game. We got CMAC back. CMAC, your thoughts on these last two games? First, Oregon, Arizona, and then this
Yeah.
game, San Francisco, St. Mary's.
Yeah, I think it's some revenge for Arizona after Oregon beat them. On the flip side, Oregon's played them so tough.
Yeah.
Oregon playing some better basketball, like you talked about with Almond. I just don't trust them. They're just so hot and cold shooting it. Man, Jekyll and Hyde for me with Oregon. I could see both sides of that, whether you want the points with Oregon, they show up, or you go with Arizona. Arizona defensively, I don't know. I don't know about that team going forward. They could score it, but not so sure. This one, St. Mary's just been good. They've just covered these numbers too at home. Is this one too much? There's been a few of them this year where I'm like, they're not going to cover this. They're too slow, and they win 77-58 or some shit like that. And I'm like, God damn. And San Francisco's had a few of these bad clunker games where you just scratch your head and you're going, what happened here? I thought they've looked good lately, but not an easy place to go play. They've been scoring as of late, but it's just kind of who they played. Could they get in the high 60s, 70s? They do that. They're in this game, but I'm not so sure. Even though I kind of want the points, I don't think I get there at all.
All right, we got two games left for marquee games. Speaking of Santa Clara, one of the teams that St. Mary's just recently beat, won and covered at home. We got Santa Clara taking on Gonzaga in this one. Gonzaga at home, 13.5-point home favorites, 159, 159.5. The total should be a bunch of points. Gonzaga is going to run. Santa Clara is going to run. It's going to be an up and down full court game. Should be a lot of possessions. Definitely in a game like this, I wouldn't be interested in the under. It'd be over or nothing. As far as the side goes, they finally won and covered against Portland last game, but Portland's had just been decimated this year with personnel issues. But before that, this Gonzaga team, 1-5 ATS. They've barely been winning games. They lost the game against Loyola Marymount, and they didn't cover against Pacific on the road. They were down in that game and had to rally back, and they won by 9 as 18.5-point favorites. I mean, they've won and covered twice against a decimated, ravaged Portland team. That's about it. I mean, every other game, Gonzaga's had a tough time covering numbers like this. You look at the recent head-to-head meeting at Santa Clara. It was a 5-point win for Gonzaga, 81-76 last month. Santa Clara was 8-point home dogs. They they covered the number in defeat. Last year, Gonzaga hosted Santa Clara, 81-69 Gonzaga, 12-point win. But Santa Clara with 22.5-point dogs, they got the money in that one. I'm looking at the dog here. Simple as that. I mean, I'm not convinced. Wow, Portland, things are all good again for Gonzaga. This team is just too lackadaisical defensively. Too many turnovers at times. I think Santa Clara hangs around here, 13.5. I'll take those points with one of the better teams in the West Coast Conference. I think they're capable of competing with Gonzaga, just like they did earlier this season when they lost by 5. What do you think here, Conor?
I think so too. And off a couple, bad losses for them, there should be points. Gonzaga's just been this team. Portland, they just, depending on what you had, barely covered. I know they beat up Pepperdine, a couple of teams where they scored 100, but this team hasn't gotten it done, at all. I don't want to lay points. I mean, are you going to think, can they get to 90, and they hold Santa Clara under 75 or whatever and cover the number right around there at least? I don't know. I think I want the points here, and I'll take them. I just think it's too many. I'm not impressed with this Gonzaga team, especially defensively. I think they score what they want, but their defense isn't good enough. So I don't want to lay numbers with them. I'll take the points.
Dog and over for me. That's what it sounds like. Yep. I think that those are the ways to go there. Washington State and USC now. The final game for our marquee games. USC 7-point home favorites in this matchup, and the total 131.5 across the board. Washington State, definitely a team that's kind of fallen on hard times. They had lost 3 straight. They did beat Arizona State last game, 75-58. USC, meanwhile, pretty solid run for them of late. They ran into UCLA and Arizona on the road, but every other recent game, Colorado at home won and covered. Utah at home won and covered. UCLA won and covered outright as dogs. They beat UCLA by double digits in their last game. And all of a sudden, they've got some really good stuff going here on their home floor. Auburn, Colorado, Utah, UCLA, 4 straight home wins and covers for the Trojans going into this matchup here against Washington State. I think the money coming in on Washington State, it makes sense to me. I do think they're going to have some advantages here in this game. They've got an excellent, excellent defensive team, 7th in the country field goal percentage defense, which definitely should help this USC team. I think it's already not easy for Washington State to be able to score points. I think they're probably going to have their struggles doing so here. Keep in mind on the road, the last 2 road games at Utah, they got blown out by 14. And then at Colorado, they did cover, but it wasn't because of their offense. They only scored 55 in that game. If they only score 55 here, they're going to be in some trouble. You could argue, do you want to lay 7? It's gone up, but it would be home favorite USC or nothing for me. I don't want Washington State. The total going down makes sense. I think definitely you would look at Washington State. They've been a machine to the under. 11 of their last 13 road games have gone under the total for Washington State. So the under definitely makes some sense, probably a lower scoring affair. Conor, what do you think here? Cougars, Trojans?
Yeah, I do like the under. I wish this, was a 134, 135 to be safe. And it just crept over against Arizona State, I think, by a bucket. What was that on Saturday? They got to score. They rely on the 3. I talked with Washington State a lot. Very slow pace this team is. SC, though, on the other side, very good at home. Initially, when I saw this last night, I was like, SC's been off for a week. I kind of like them 5. Now it's moved to 7.5. And looking, Washington State's matched up with this team well. Some teams just, they're close games, and that's what they've seemed like the last 2 years between these teams. Yep. So now at this number, I kind of lean Wazoo here a little bit and under.
Yeah, you're right about that. They've given USC some problems. USC's coming off a rivalry win against UCLA. There's reasons to expect maybe a minor USC letdown. There's definitely potential for that. But they've also just been so good on the home floor, and Washington State's been flighty at times on the road. So there's definitely arguments you can make here for laying it, for taking the points as well in this game with the Cougars and the Trojans here. All right, good stuff. That's the marquee games for the Thursday slate. Conor Mack, we'll start with you in terms of games we have not talked about on this very big Thursday card, especially when it comes to mid-major basketball. Games that we have not talked about, Conor, that you're liking here on the board tonight.
I don't know what to do with this, this total. I want this under. It's moved up. We know Marshall scores a ton of points, and they're an over machine. But App State's an under team, and you think if they're in this game, it would need to stay under. It's moved up 4 points. I just kept waiting, and I don't know if I pull the trigger. It's up to 147.5, and it's kind of stalled here. But I still lean under. I don't know. Maybe I'm spooked and I'm going to stay off there. I took them at 5 here. Ian, UTEP. I think this team hangs around. They play close basketball games.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Mine for you units. I'm doing that
I'm
too.
mining for units here. They lost by 10 to North Texas, and they're not good on the road. 1-6 or 7, but they cover. This team covers numbers. And at 5, I thought that was enough. They keep it close with Middle Tennessee there. Let's keep it rolling. Cleveland State, Detroit. Cleveland State all of a sudden scoring, playing to the over. We know how Detroit is. I love this over a lot. 144.5, 145. I think we get over the number in that one. I've kind of been looking at that. Yep. Yeah, all day. I was kind of staring at that, thinking this was a good one to take over. There, we talked about Santa Clara. Portland's the struggles with them, and I haven't gone here. I lean San Diego. It's just you got to lay 2 with them, but I think they could win here. I believe Portland just beat them like 87-83. We got a high total in the 160s, but I kind of lean San Diego there. Extra board. Hold on, I gotta hit this. I did like Northwestern State. This is a team. What are they? 15-5 to the number. I haven't been on them enough. I've only been on them like 2 or 3 times. 6.5, 7. They've been great, and going through all their scores, they've been great first half. This is a tease first half type thing. I think they take care of business here. Houston, they just beat them by, I believe, 20 a couple of games ago. It might be a double up spot for me, but I'll definitely have them first half there. I think that was it. I leaned to this under with Bellarmine. I don't know if I get there. And that was it from the extra board, I think. I think I'm done.
All right, there we go. And there's some that I definitely agreed with there in terms of the the sides and the totals.
What do you think about Oakland? You going to lay the 2 with them?
I like Oakland. It's one of my
I mean,
sides. I like Oakland there. I've been taking Oakland a lot lately. Oakland, this is what Greg Campy teams do.
Yeah,
they get
they're
better.
laying it though now. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, they get better as the season goes on. Purdue Fort Wayne has frustrated me. I took them. I won with Oakland on Friday, and I lost last Friday with Fort Wayne against Cleveland State. And they got down big. They made it interesting late, but they just fell short of the cover. I think Oakland's playing just better right now, and they gave Youngstown State quite the game. Youngstown State. Speaking of Youngstown State, Wright State over the total in that game. I mean, that's going to be a shootout. Wright State, every game is going over the goddamn total. I mean, they are just and Youngstown State's an over machine too. They can score with the best of them. That's a great offensive team, Youngstown State, but they can give up points there as well. So that's a great over, I think. Wright State, Youngstown State. You're going to see a lot of points there. That's also why the total obviously is in the mid 150s, but it's there for a reason. I think it's still going to go over the total. All right, rapid fire through, and there's a bunch of games. Mercer Bears +3, William and Mary Hampton over one. Bill and his bitch, I should say, Hampton over 143 in that one. James Madison money line against Old Dominion. I think this is a good spot and I'm not an Old Dominion fan, as I've mentioned many times. Monmouth, I know they're rebuilding, but they were just all of a sudden dropping in their power rating so much that now there's absolutely value betting them. And they're actually starting to really cover and cash tickets for their backers. Monmouth getting 9 against Delaware. I like Monmouth there in that game. Rice, Louisiana Tech over the number. I think there's points in that game. Elon, I've talked about the Phoenix. Elon +3 against, I'm trying to remember, Stony Brook. So who's Stony Brook to be laying 3 and trustworthy? To be laying point. They've been a brutal home team, brutal home favorite, even worse than that. They've been a worse home favorite, Stony Brook. So I like Elon there, the Phoenix. They've been a nice little cash cow for me lately. Elon. I think the money moving on Northern Kentucky is worth a look. I think they're better than Robert Morris, and they're coming off a loss. So I think you're going to get a good performance from the Norse of Northern Kentucky. So I'm in agreement with that movement toward them. In that game, I'm on VMI, the Key Dets. Again, this is just a Citadel team I don't love laying points with. I think VMI +5.5, +6 is good. Look there. Florida International, Charlotte. With Florida International's pace alone, they've basically roped me into taking over 133 here. I just have to take that at a number that low involving Florida International. I mentioned Oakland. I like them money line -130 against Fort Wayne. I like the over in that game as well. Now they're hammering the over in the Wright State, Youngstown State. This was down around 156 like 5 minutes ago. It's like they're listening to the show. It's 158 now. It's going up. So I agree with that. Be careful with laying the points with Youngstown, though. Youngstown is starting to be in a lot of close games, struggling to cover some of these numbers as home favorites, and Wright State's a capable offensive team. So that could be a good dog bet there on Wright State, the Raiders.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously 7 goes to 5.5. When you don't play that, your defense is it's not easy to cover unless they just shoot the lights out and Wright State's bricking. But I think it could be close. Yeah.
Yeah, I lean Wright State too. I like the over more, but I lean Wright State too. Again, Youngstown State's covered numbers when they've absolutely shot like 50% from 3, which they've done a bunch this year. But I think that definitely would be dog, and the overs definitely strong. I totally agree with Conor with Cleveland State, Detroit over. I think that's a really good look. I like Charleston Drexel over the total. I'd probably lean Charleston too. I mean, Drexel, they've had a rough year. Probably the road favorite. I'd look to Charleston and over the total. Like I said, 142. I think it goes over. What else? UT Martin, Edwardsville. There's another over that I like. I like North Carolina A&T against Wilmington. Wilmington's been a rough road, a home favorite. A&T's been a nice little dog as well. A&T's actually fared okay here, first year in the Colonial Athletic Association. So I definitely like A&T a little bit there, +8 against Wilmington. Nice little in-state battle as well. Monroe, I like the Warhawks there, laying a short number. I'd take the money line, though, against Coastal Carolina. UTSA, meet the Roadrunners in Western Kentucky. I like the over there, 144, 144 and a half. What else have we got? Little Rock, Southeast Missouri State should be high scoring. Would look over 155 and a half in that game. St. Thomas, Nebraska, Omaha, another over 143. I think that game with the Tommies and the Mavericks of Nebraska, Omaha goes over the total as well. Tennessee State, Southern Indiana. I always gravitate to overs with Southern Indiana, play extremely fast. I'm with Conor on the UTEP look plus the points. Utah Valley, Utah Tech should be another good over there. Two teams that'll push pace. What else have we got? Pepperdine Pacific over. High number, but man, where's that? The points are going to flow in that game. Pepperdine and Pacific should be a lot of points there. Conor mentioned San Diego. I mean, it's hard to back Portland right now. What a disappointing season, but a lot of it's been injuries for Shante Legans. Just when that program was turning a corner, and then they've just been ravaged this season. It's unfortunate, but it's hard to back them. They're having a hard time competing. So I'd look San Diego there. Should be points, but man, high total 160. And you're seeing this offense is hampered right now for Portland with the injuries at the moment. Eastern Washington, Sacramento State. I'm starting to cash in with overs with Eastern Washington again. They're starting to rev that over machine up again. So I think that's worth a look there with Sacramento State over 137 and a half.
Real quick, the first time they met, it went over. Sac State, though, an under team. I wonder if that got over. I've looked at that game a ton today, and Eastern Washington keeps winning.
Yep.
You know, I kind of like Sac State at home. That was a tough game for me.
Yeah, tough one there. Idaho, Portland State, another over look for me there, and that's it for the main board. The added board, not a ton on the added board today, personally, for me. Kennesaw State, Bellarmine is like Kennesaw State's going to push pace. Bellarmine wants to grind it out, defense, half court. So that one's a tricky one there, in my opinion. I kind of like Jacksonville State, the Gamecocks, +7 against Eastern Kentucky. I mean, Eastern Kentucky's never that team that's, wow, I really feel comfortable laying bigger points with them. I think that game probably is closer. Eastern Kentucky, especially when their totals are only 142 and a half, you got to lean over, when it's Eastern Kentucky and the totals in the 140s. Queens and Lipscomb should go over 155. I think that's worth a look in that game there. And you mentioned Northwestern State. You're right. They've been a machine. They really should beat down Houston Christian, probably by double digits. So looking at the road favorite there might be worth a look there in that one. Yeah, we talked about LMU, BYU, Regis. So rewind the video after we're done, and you'll hear our LMU, BYU breakdown. And Hofstra we mentioned earlier. We did that show, did that game, Daryl, Towson and Hofstra. I like Towson there, plus the points against Hofstra, and so does Connor Mack. Good stuff. Great chat. Thank you guys for all the Stetson at home against North Bama. It's funny that North Alabama for me was cashing some tickets a while back. Hasn't been nearly as good lately, but Stetson, pretty good team, but laying 5.5. I don't know. North Alabama's been pretty good to me at times this year. I'd maybe lean to the dog there with North Alabama against Stetson. Haven't bet it, but I lean to the dog there.
Yeah, it's come down 1.5 points.
Yep.
Stetson played over, but the total's high. Yeah, I stayed off.
Yeah, no doubt. I almost want to take Central Arkansas. Actually, I still might add that one against Florida Gulf Coast. I don't know if Florida Gulf Coast is a team that I think, 12-point favorite. I trust that team. Not necessarily the case. So I know it's been rough for Central Arkansas. No question, both ends of the court, but that's a lot of points to be laying with the Gulf Coast. So I might look at the Central Arkansas side there in that one. St. Francis, PA, and Stonehill. This might be a good chance for Stonehill to get a win, honestly, because St. Francis, PA, they've really hit some hard times, some rough waters. I remember they played the other St. Francis recently, and they got absolutely destroyed. They've won one road game this year. That's trouble. Just overall on the road, they've been really bad. And I know Stonehill, Stonehill's a newbie to Division I college basketball. They had a little swoon there for a while, but they've picked it up. LIU, FDU, Fairleigh Dickinson, Sacred Heart. They've won 3 of their last 4 games. I think Stonehill just to win at home. I might look at that direction. I might add that to my card, actually, Stonehill. So
St. Francis, Brooklyn got it done.
Yep.
I was a little shocked that they were 2-point dogs. I thought that should have been a pick 'em, or they were like a 1-point favorite.
Yeah,
but they got it done.
Southeast Louisiana on paper, Mike M, is an over team. It's a team that I want to look to back overs with. Let me just pull up their recent history. But yeah, historically, usually that's a team that's going to push the tempo, no question, and that usually is beneficial for over the total. The one issue is sometimes you get these really, really bad, and I mean really, really bad scoring droughts from the
Teams,
Incarnate
yeah.
Word. So that's going to be the question. Incarnate Word's actually started to cover some numbers, so keep that in mind. They've trended under. But like I said, and Mike M, you hinted at it. There's no way I bet CLA, as I like to call them, Southeast Louisiana over the under the total. There's no way I bet them under the total. They've been an over machine. I think they've gone over 6 of their last 7. It's can Incarnate Word, help out with the total offensively themselves. But I lean over there definitely. Hawaii, says Daryl Turner. You're right. We got to talk the Hawaii game, right? The late night special. There. Although I don't think it's as late night because they're not on the island tonight. They're on the mainland. They're at UC Davis. People love this Hawaii team. And look, I think they're probably better than UC Davis. I do. But I remember this same spot when they played Irvine and they went on the mainland. They played Irvine. People were betting the hell out of Hawaii and they lost that game. So be careful.
Yeah.
When you go on the mainland, it's a little trickier. I think they are the better team, but be careful there.
That's what I think. Irvine, I thought that was different, and they've struggled with them, and they've kind of been kings of that conference for a long time. I don't trust UC Davis. This is one where usually I fade Hawaii, come in here, but I just think they're better.
I think they're just better. I agree. 100%. I agree. I think they're better. I'd play Hawaii or nothing, honestly. I wouldn't play Davis.
I agree.
Yep,
I agree.
All right, there we go. We got to wrap. It's Best Bets coming up. Thanks to everyone for the questions. Hit the like button. 228 live viewers. We appreciate it. Best Bets coming up right after we hear from Manscaped and Southtown 101. Southtown 101, when you're in San Antonio, Texas, stop in. Great food, drinks, live music, DJs, karaoke. Southtown 101, manscaped.com, promo code PubSports, 20% off and free shipping with promo code PubSports. We'll run the ad, of course, at the end of the show, but don't forget about Pubapalooza, too, in a couple months, March 24, 26. Great weekend it'll be. Make sure you're there. Best bets, Conor Mack, we'll start with you. What do you got for best bet?
Let's go to the total. Cleveland State, Detroit over 144.5. I think we get there. These teams, I think they get to the 150s. And just throw this on there. Daryl, he put it Northwestern State. I think you take them 3.5 first half. Throw that on there as well.
There you go. First half look for Northwestern State and liking that Cleveland State.
I think, you know what, real quick, they've covered even on the road by it seems like 10 every time. And I think I'm going to split that. But first halves have been really good for them. They've been able to go home or road, Northwestern State, and be up by 8 to 12, it seems like, every game.
All right, excellent. I like it. I'm going to a total for my best bet. I'm going to go Houston, Wichita State over 130. Actually, there's a 130 at Bookmaker right now, /Chris. 130 and a half in many other books. It's a great total, I think, tonight. It's very low. Wichita State's been an over machine. Houston's not the same, defensive team at the moment. Not saying they can't become that again, but right now they're not at that elite upper echelon defensive level that we've seen under Kelvin Sampson for much of his tenure here. They're giving up baskets. Wichita is in great offensive flow and rhythm the last several games. Houston can score. I mean, that's what everybody forgets about Houston. Everyone focuses on just how great they are defensively. No, they can score. They're a good offensive team. They'll score here on Wichita. But I think Wichita against this Houston defense has been a little bit more leakier and shakier than we've seen in recent memory. They'll put some points on the board as well, and we're not asking for a shootout with a total as low as 130. So Houston and Wichita State, we're going to go over 130 with that game for my best bet here for this Thursday card.
That'll wrap. Real quick, Jay Peasy. I like it. I really don't trust Fullerton. Long Beach has just always been so much better at home lately. But this number, open to 3, down to 2. A few spots I see 1.5. Some of the better books like Circa in town. So I don't mind it. Maybe one on the road they could get against a Fullerton team. I think it's just okay.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's not a bad look there at all. Great stuff. Great show. Packed a lot into an hour. These Thursday cards with all the mid-major action, they're pretty lengthy. Great show, great analysis. Conor Mack, as always, great job. Jose behind the scenes, great job. And, of course, tomorrow, make sure you're here at 5 p.m. Eastern, but it'll be Dabby Cab in for me on the Friday show with Conor Mack, breaking down the short Friday slate. If you want to hear my thoughts on the Friday college basketball card, we'll be going through the whole slate on Betting with the Bag with Jimmy the Bag tomorrow morning. I'll be with him for the entire college basketball card tomorrow. So, and that'll be it. That's the only thing I'm doing with Jimmy the Bag tomorrow because there's no NHL. NBA I don't do because I have the Pub Hub. So just college basketball. We'll run through the card. Jimmy the Bag and I on Betting with the Bag tomorrow morning starting at 11 a.m. Eastern time. That's a wrap for Conor Mack. I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Thursday night. Enjoy the games and good luck. And we'll see you again tomorrow right here on Pub Sports Radio.
Palooza 2 on the horizon. We're going to have live shows popping off in the Southtown 101. We're going to have a poker tournament, a par 3 golf tournament, UFC San Antonio on the Saturday night. A lot of excitement. Palooza 2!